I wanted to start off this week with a broad overview of the structural constituents of the musculoskeletal system with a sort of an eye for how they contribute to the body's ability to handle mechanical loads or create mechanical loads. So we'll just take a broad perspective of the different things we'll be looking at and what they do. So we'll start with just the skeleton, of course. The skeleton is, from a structural engineer's perspective, it's like the scaffolding. It's like the load-bearing, rigid components of the body. And the human skeleton is very well adapted for transmitting forces that we encounter during our various activities. We also have another amazing capability, which is the ability not just to bear loads, but actually to generate them. And that, as you know, comes from our muscles. So muscles are another important constituent of the skeleton. So maybe sketch out the gastrocs here. And muscles are attached to bones with these sort of thick, fibrous things that we call tendons. And maybe that my anatomy is not perfect here. This Achilles tendon I'm drawing is probably a little too long, but wanted to draw it like this to emphasize the way of being able to think about this as like a thick kind of elastic rope. So tendons are very important for transmitting forces from muscles to bones. And then, of course, at the juncture of one bone and another bone, we have to make sure those bones can move freely between each other. And so we have something called cartilage on the surface of our joints. Again, I'm assuming this is review for you. But it's important to keep in mind that the role of cartilage is twofold. One is to absorb shock from the forces that are being transmitted up the body, and another is to ensure the easy, free movement of joints. Now, cartilage would not be very much use if bones could just kind of slide around willy-nilly. And so we have something else called ligaments that attach bones to each other and keep them solidly in place and only allow the range of motion that we want, or at least ideally. So a ligament is actually, and we'll see this in I think probably next week, ligaments are very, very similar to tendons, except they just connect a bone to a bone instead of a muscle to a muscle. You're probably familiar with many of the ligaments inside the knee. Okay, I'm sort of haphazardly drawing here, like the ACL, the MCL, so on. Interesting point on that, by the way. This right here, colloquially, and I call that the patellar tendon, but many people in the medical literature suggest that you should actually call this patellar ligament because it connects a bone to another bone. There's a few other things that don't quite fit into these broad categories. You may be familiar with, there's a structure right here that goes from the base of your heel up and it fans out to the bottom of your 5 metatarsals. Usually we call this the plantar fascia, sometimes the plantar ligament, sometimes the plantar aponeurosis. And there's something else called the iliotibial band, which if you are into running or cycling, maybe you know about. It goes off like this, and it's sort of like a ligament, but it's also attached to a muscle, but it's also attached to the bone. So I just want to point these out just so that you're aware of the fact that you may bump into in your career odd things like this that aren't maybe easily fitting into those categories of muscle, tendon, cartilage, ligament, or bone. So with that, we're going to jump right into looking at bone in detail and how its microscopic structure contributes to its mechanical properties. And we'll be going over that in the next video.